On the Mount Rushmore of work boots, Thorogood is perfectly placed there. You used to go to any job site, they're always there. They're the mock toes, they're pull-on work boots. Thorogood has just solidified themselves as one of the most dependable and well-known and trusted brands when it comes to actual work boots. But they're not necessarily known for making Western boots. I heard that they were coming out with another work boot that was more Western-inspired pull-on boot with the safety toe that looks pretty broad in the toe and looks like it's built like the rest of Thorogoods. I wanted to cut them in half, so we got a couple pairs of them to cut in half, run through our test to see if this is still built to Thorogood standard, and ultimately, are they worth the price? Because that's part of why Thorogood is so popular, is they deliver really high quality boots at a very affordable price. And are these built like true Thorogoods, where they blend the synthetic materials for comfort with the heritage materials for durability and old school construction techniques to make them last as long as humanly possible and then be viable for another resole? That's what we're gonna figure out. So then what are these boots? Well, the brand is Thorogood. The style is a square toe Wellington. They weigh 2 pounds 9 ounces. They retail for $245, and they're made in the USA with USA and globally sourced parts. And the way to position this product is there's no reason why a great pair of work boots can't also be a great looking pair of everyday boots. Thorogood's Western work 11-inch black and crazy horse safety toe waterproof Wellington work boots give you the best of both worlds. You'll have the protection you need with full grain leather materials, an 11-inch shaft, steel toe, and waterproof construction, plus slip resistant and oil resistant Wyatt 90 outsole. Thorogood boots are meticulously crafted using top quality American leathers, ensuring both style and durability that can withstand rigorous demands of today's job sites. Inside, our ultimate shock absorption footbed gives you the added comfort to keep you on your feet all day long. And we also have the nano toe version that's $239, also made in USA, and basically the same positioning. It's just mostly a toe difference, at least what it looks like from the outside. So first, looking at the leather, the thing that surprised me the most about this is usually in this kind of boot, especially with this ornate detail, you usually see a thicker vamp leather down here at the toe, and you see a lot thinner leather backed with another thinner leather for the shaft. But what's really cool about these is this is work boot thickness leather all the way from the toe all the way to the top of the boot, and the shaft is still lined. So this upper leather is about twice as thick as what you see in most pull-on work boots that have this kind of ornate detail. A lot of times you'll see a thicker leather that's unbacked without this detail, but this is pretty rare to see 2.5 millimeter thick leather that has a sewing all the way through it with a backer and a lining. So your overall thickness for just the shaft is 4 millimeters. So right off the bat, clearly positioned for work, because there's no other reason to do that, because it's such a pain in the butt to have this much sewing go through 2.5 millimeters thick leather and have a backer on it. So far so good, and the leather's really good quality too. You look at the cross section, plenty of grain left in it, lots of that saturated oil and conditioner worked into it. So much so that you can take the toe of the boot, give it a little scratch, and all you have to do to get rid of those scratches is heat up that wax and those oils that are deeply conditioned into the leather, and it takes all those little loose fibers that you stood up by giving it a scratch and lays them back down flat. And not that you're trying to keep your work boots pristine, but this is just a good indicator that this leather is highly conditioned and ready for work instead of a really dry leather. Because imagine you're going out working, whether it's cement dust or whether it's dirt or whether it's any kind of barnyard chemical, really anything you expose your boots to at work pulls out moisture, it makes the leather brittle, makes it drier, adds abrasive to the leather. And so having a highly conditioned leather is exactly what you want for a work boot. Just the leather alone, very impressed with Thorogood, because they easily could have done a thinner leather, they could have done a cheaper leather, but they didn't, and it still has all the detail. So far so good. And we did the puncture test on these leathers, and they all were around 90 to 115 pounds, so pretty good scores across the board. What about that lining leather we talked about? Because it does have lining leather, but it doesn't go all the way down into the boot. For the majority of the boot, you've got that moisture wicking kind of chevron looking pattern that Thorogood uses in a lot of their boots. It's allegedly moisture wicking, keeps your feet cooler. I just prefer leather because I like how it doesn't stink. But one thing I do like is there seems to be some sort of internal heel counter that adds a little extra protection of that high wear spot at your heel, where with these kind of boots where you don't have anything to cinch them down around your ankle, you get a lot of heel slip. And so I don't know what the material is, but it's in both, so we'll see when we get it cut in half. And it feels like there's some foam in between the lining and the rest of the boot, making it more comfortable, but also making it maybe a little bit hotter, potentially more stinky compared to just like a full leather boot. But if we look at the insoles, this is exactly the same insole that you get in their classic mock toes. It has this more gel-like pads in the heel and in the ball of your foot, and then a more softer foam throughout the rest. And you can see it is clearly a square toe work boot. But what I like is these square toes, they're pretty wide. You compare it to even, like I just did a Wolverine video, and you can see the Thorogood is significantly wider, probably a 1/4 inch wider you know, and they're both safety toes. And you can see how this Wolverine really pinches down, and that's where you get that step where people really start rubbing on their pinky toe and their big toe, whereas these Thorogoods are a nice gradual slope. And so they're even wider than most steel toe work boots. Then underneath the insole, you can see that lining's wrapped all the way under, and that's because these are waterproof, and it has that waterproof lining between the outer leather and that lining material, and that wraps all the way under the foot. So we ran the waterproof test, both passed with flying colors, and they both resisted absorbing a lot of that water because of how conditioned, how waxed and oiled this leather is. And one thing I really like about Thorogoods is they're super comfortable. You've got the insoles, you've got like the lining has a little bit of padding, and they do a really good job of balancing modern materials that give you that squish and comfort with the old school materials that give you the durability. And one thing I really like about this boot is they took their classic wedge sole that everyone really loves. It's polyurethane based, so it's more abrasion resistant than rubber. It lasts a really long time, and they made it into a kind of a Western heeled boot. And so this has to have a shank. I'm really hoping this has a shank on it, because if you don't have anything supporting that gap from the heel to the forefoot, you can get a high pressure spot where that heel starts to collapse a little bit. But the idea with this outsole is to combine the values of a heeled boot where you can ride horses in them. You've got this basically giant lug in the back with the squish and comfort that Thorogood is known for with their regular wedge sole. The real thing I care about is, does this have a shank supporting it or does it not? Because this is a pretty soft outsole. It comes at a 45 Shore A, so it's about what you'd expect from their wedge soles. So we'll see. And then really the last thing to look at is how these boots are constructed, because regular Thorogoods, they have this exact same welt with the exact same rubber midsole, and it's a true Goodyear welt construction, but this one top stitch is fake. I don't know why they do that. I guess it's just to make it look more rugged and more work ready. The white one is real, at least on most Thorogoods, but we don't know for sure because we haven't cut it in half. So at least from the outside, it looks like a 360 Goodyear welt. So let's cut these in half, see what's on the inside, and see if they really are built to regular Thorogood standards, or if they've done what most brands do and just slowly degrade their quality as they enter new segments of the footwear market. Well, let's find out. All right, we got them cut in half. If you're not subscribed, consider pushing that little subscribe button, because it's fun to be able to do these like little one-off videos, just checking brands to see if they're still making them like they used to. So support us where you can. Check out our leather goods, check out our collaborations. So now, let's see what's inside. If I can keep this insole in there. So what's on the inside of these? They're pretty close to being built the same way the regular Thorogoods are. You know, you've got this, I think that's fake leather in the heel counter. I'm like, just put real leather in there. Like, it will be more abrasion resistant than if it was just the fabric, and it is backed by the fabric too, so you have to wear it through several layers before you wear to that waterproof lining. I'm like, just make that out of leather. It's maybe a little bit more expensive, but that's the #1 spot where most of these boots wear out, because you just inherently get tons of heel slip. But now you can really see how thick that upper leather is with the backer, and so now that you can see the inside, you can see you've got that canvas backer, you've got that foam in between, you got that lining. So that must be how they got away with being able to do a thicker outer, was they didn't sew all the way through to the lining with all this ornate detail, and the lining wasn't leather all the way through, so it allowed them to have the ability to run a thicker outer leather, which I really like. You know, I think the only thing that I would like more is if it was completely unlined, but then you'd lose the waterproof aspects of it. And they have their classic pull-on boot that basically is that we're doing in a big compilation video. Is it actually Goodyear welt? Yes, it is. It's the exact same way it's built for the other Thorogoods, but there is a few differences from one boot to the other, because this boot has a different lasting material. It has more of a puncture resistant looking outsole. You know, sometimes you see these in those boots that have to be puncture resistant certified. So we did the puncture test on both with these results. So it might be that. Even the cork looks a little bit different. This cork looks a lot finer. It could be just a difference in the batches, but they're both made in the USA, so it's hard to say. They even have different lengths of shanks. So I'm not sure where they mix and match parts, because the outsoles are the same, the midsoles are the same. They both have cork, different shanks, different insole materials. One's your typical pink fiberboard, the other's more that puncture resistant material, and then everything else is the same. So it must come down to that. It must be the difference in the puncture resistance. And another thing that's pretty interesting is you can see how much they have to build up underneath those steel toes to really get them to pass that ASTM certification, because you can't just have a strong steel toe because there's nothing underneath of it to support it. It'll just smush down to the bottom and like blow out your boot and smush your toes either way. So you can see how much they actually have to build those up to get them to pass. And so that's another reason why steel toes are never quite as comfortable as other boots, because you just have to build them up in a way that you don't have to with regular boots. So then finally, is this built to Thorogood standard? Are they worth the price? Is this what you'd expect from Thorogood? I think it is. I think they've done a really cool job of making sure that this is a work-oriented boot across the board, while still keeping these Western little flares like the sewing through a super thick upper, keeping the loved, soft, but durable polyurethane outsole, but making it slightly more Western, keeping the internal components and structure mostly the same as Thorogood's. I'm just not sure why there's a difference between the two, but they're basically the same. Ultimately, this boot is a good representation of what Thorogood does and why they're so popular, because they balance the true heritage, traditional methods and materials to make them super durable and long lasting with all the modern comfort and techniques that allow these to feel more like a modern boot, all wrapped in a very traditional aesthetic. And the balance of those three things is a big part of why I think Thorogood's still popular and still one of the top work boot brands, and why on every single work site you'll find at least one pair of Thorogoods. So let me know what you guys think. Do you think these live up to Thorogood standards? Do you think these are better or worse than other work boots in a similar price range? If you've had a pair of these, what's your experience in them? And thank you guys for watching these videos. If you want a pair of these, or if you want to see some other Thorogood videos, I'll put the regular mock toe video below. And I'll also put a link to their Genesis boot that we just did a few months ago that's a lot more pushed towards the modern boots. So let me know what you guys think. Thank you for all your support. See ya.